All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Robbie Basel Show. I'm your host, Robbie Basel, here live from just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Doing a couple episodes here. Nothing's really gonna be around the old setup, so you're gonna see a couple different setups in the upcoming episodes. But today we have a very short episode. Actually, today we didn't have much to talk about because for you guys, the last time we were on, we talked about NHL, NBA free agency. We talked about a couple other things that were going on. But differently today, I'm going to talk. We're going to do episodes eventually where I go over like the season previews. That's when we're really going to talk about those NBA and NHL free agents because I don't think it's right to. I mean, soccer is different because of how many different leagues and players move. Because there's a lot of players that move. You see, Arsenal have already made 3 new signings. They officially signed Declan Rice and Jurriën Timber this morning, and everything's gonna be official with their medicals today. So the difference is, like those are hundreds of leagues. The NHL NBA free agency is so much easier to talk about in just one separate video, and we're just gonna do that eventually later. So only 3 topics today. We have Wimbledon, F1 race this weekend, and of course, we have our CONCACAF Gold Cup, and that's where we're starting today. Because last time we talked on this topic, we had these situations in the groups from for Tuesday. Excuse me, there were no games on Monday. I was previewing everything that happened on Tuesday. So let's go into the matches from Tuesday. We're going to begin in Group D, which is who started today. And entering the day, we had Guadeloupe and Guatemala topping the group, followed by Canada. Cuba was already out of the picture. Guadeloupe or Guatemala needed to win for clear safety or needed Canada to drop points to Cuba. Well, Canada took care of business, winning their matchup 4-2. Junior Hoylett had scored a penalty, then Jonathan Osorio, Jaden Nelson, and Liam Miller scored for Canada. So, and then both of Cuba's goals, by the way, were penalty kicks. So 3 penalty kicks were scored in that match. So that put all the pressure on Guadeloupe and Guatemala. And what happened? Well, Guatemala took care of business, winning 3 goals to 2. They went down early and equalized to 1-1. Then went down 2-1 and then won at 3-2 on a late winner from Carlos Mejia. Granted, Guadeloupe looked like the better team statistically, but at the end of the day, Guatemala is going to go out of the group at the top. They won the group on 7 points ahead of Canada, which is I don't know what to really think about that. I mean, Canada going in, I picked them to win the whole thing, and so far, you've won one and have dropped points in 2 others. That's not that great. Granted, they're on 5 points, so they're into the knockouts. Barely. And shout out to Guadeloupe, who I had no faith in this tournament at all. They got 4 points and got kind of screwed because with their goal difference, they would have made it out of Group C, which we're going to talk about in a minute. They would have made it out of the Group B ahead of Qatar. They would not have made it out of Group A because Jamaica won 2 matches. So out of all the those teams, you feel bad for Guadeloupe because they are a small country with not a big footballing culture. And now, unfortunately, they barely missed the knockouts because they went out and couldn't get a better result against some of the other teams in the group. Granted, if you look at what Guadeloupe did, let's go over the whole thing now. They drew Canada, beat Cuba, lost to Guatemala. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Guatemala, I thought going in would be the better team. I picked Guadeloupe to finish last in this group. Remember, I picked Cuba to finish in second, and they finished in last. So a couple of red flags for some of these teams, but a very positive tournament, I think, for Guadeloupe. Granted that they lost to Guatemala. So that sets up a couple of knockout games. Early, you have USA playing Canada. We're gonna go into all the. I'm just naming you the games now, and then we're gonna preview them all in a minute. But we have USA, Canada, and Guatemala and Jamaica. Those games are gonna be played on Sunday. The other matches, I talked about what could happen in Group C because entering the day you had Martinique and Panama. Panama already being through, Martinique sitting in second, and you had Costa Rica and El Salvador who are in very tight situations because they both have dropped points to some of the worst teams. The two I thought the worst roster in the group in Martinique. Well, Costa Rica, no, excuse me, Costa Rica, I thought could drop points to Martinique because El Salvador did, but no, Costa Rica played a 10-goal thriller and beat Martinique 6-4. Sounds like a baseball score. And now Costa Rica is into the knockouts after dropping points in both opening matches. So Costa Rica is through. That means El Salvador needs to go out and win, which El Salvador promptly goes out and loses. Well, they were losing for a while, and then a 91st minute equalizer by Meyer Gill saved them a point, but it didn't really matter. El Salvador, who I thought were underdogs in this tournament to go very far, have gone out in the group stage inexplicably. So here we are now. El Salvador, the sleepers, are out, and Panama and Costa Rica make it out of the group of death alive. So that sets up matches, and we're gonna go into all the matches. We're kicking off the knockouts tomorrow on Saturday with Panama, Qatar, and then Mexico, Costa Rica. I am circling the Mexico, Costa Rica match. Mexico has actually looked much more competent than we thought they would. I thought they would bring a less loaded roster to this tournament. But no, they didn't. They brought a highly loaded roster. You have Cesar Montes in the back. Henry Martin actually looks decent. He scored 2 goals. And you've had other different pieces really contribute in this tournament for Mexico, especially from the depth to the starters. They've all looked great, which is concerning for me as a fan of the United States, of course, that U.S. made it out of into the knockouts, and they could possibly be eliminated in the quarterfinals because Canada hasn't dropped points either, so hasn't technically lost a match. So that'll be just a quick note as well. And they have Panama, Qatar, which I'm going Panama all the way. And Qatar to me didn't deserve to make it into the knockouts. Granted, Honduras didn't look much better, but Honduras, the best way you can put this for Honduras is that granted, both of them got red cards against each other. Because if you look at what Qatar did beat Mexico, but Mexico were throwing the backups on the field because they were through already. They lost to Haiti with their starters on the field. Like, if you lose to Mexico with their full-fledged starting 11, if you're like a small, tiny island, that's fine. That's not that unmotivating. When you lose to it, like I guess a country like Qatar, that's a bigger problem because you're the big sponsor. You're trying to promote your game. You have more resources. You're a very rich country, and you go out and get beaten by Haiti, who are one of the poorest countries in the world. That's inexplicable. Yet they found their way into the knockouts. I think Panama's going to give them a big reality check in this match. I think Panama does win and advances to the semifinals, which would be on Wednesday, and I'd preview that for you guys on Monday. And then you go to the other matches. We talked about Guatemala and Jamaica. We'll start with them. Jamaica, I think, should make it out of this match. Jamaica with Leon Bailey, Michael Antonio, all of those guys, Damari Gray, who has had an under-sleeper tournament. Of course, can't forget about Andre Blake in net, who I think is one of the best goalkeepers, one of the most underrated goalkeepers in CONCACAF. So with that loaded team with Jamaica, you have to imagine they beat that Guatemala team. Granted, Guatemala has looked solid, especially in that back. They play not as much of a low block as I thought they would. They're not that desperate. They've been pushing up the field much more. You saw it in the Guadalupe match. They're pushing up the field, especially with their midfield. Their midfield getting high up the field, getting guys in the box. They scored a lot of area. They're a much better aerial threat, and that's how I'm going to describe them. Will that be a problem against the Jamaicans? Absolutely, but I think the Jamaican speed is what's going to thrive in this match. I do think Jamaica will make it to the semifinals, where I believe they'll play the United States again, because I do think it's either going to be the USA or Canada. I think this is probably the best match of the quarterfinals. The United States, a young squad, having better names, young stars from like the under 21s, all those guys get their ways into the senior team. You've seen some solid names from this. I mean, you look at the last match against Trinidad, which I thought was going to be a close one. They ran their team off the field. Jesus Ferreira, showing that the MLS actually looks kind of competent. I mean, the MLS is adding all these new players, but the Americans typically weren't the better players in MLS, the American-born players. They're proving that wrong. And Jesus Ferreira is now in the record books for the United States men's national team. Think about that already. So the FC Dallas player, I think, is going to make a big impact. Cade Cowell scored a goal in that last match, by the way. I think if they start, Brendan Vasquez has been a big impact in the two of the three matches that he's come in. He scored a goal late. So I think you might need that against the Canadians, but it's going to be a fun match either way. I'm going to totally try and watch that game. I don't know if I have the channel here in my hotel room, but yeah, 7:30 on Sunday night, the Americans play Canada. Last time we played Canada, we lost. Then we drew the game before that. We haven't beaten the Canadians since the 2021 Gold Cup, just for reference, when we beat them in the group stage on a second-minute goal. So, yeah, it should be a fun one for sure, but we get to see what happens for the semifinals on Monday. So that's the end of the first topic, and we're going to head over to Formula One next. And we do have a race this week, and it feels great to say that we have the British Grand Prix this week. Now, for those who don't know F1 very well, the British Grand Prix in recent years has seen a lot of protesters run on the track. And Lando Norris said some great comments about it today, saying they shouldn't, in essence, should not be trying to go out and promote their ideas by endangering themselves on a racing track. And he's 100% right. But I do think that it's very possible if you're new to F1 and want to watch this race, which, by the way, it's one of the most famous tracks, and one of my personal favorite tracks in the whole circuit, in the whole calendar. So should be a very fun race day for sure. But looking at the practices, it looks like it's going to be all Max again. I mean, Max looked the best in FP1 and FP2. The surprising one for me, though, Alex Albon in third for both practice sessions. Could we see that Williams really promote themselves and really see them get up the timing sheets? Tomorrow's qualifying is where we're really going to have that question answered. But I mean, you saw Logan Sargent P5. I don't know. I mean, if you look at the bottom, you have the two AlphaTauris. I mean, we heard about their rebrand, but I think both of those guys could possibly get sacked mid-season for the junior drivers. So it's very possible that what they're doing at Williams is a very big positive. Third and fifth with probably the worst car on the grid. I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard much about that car at all. They're only not even a second off the pace for Max's best lap. So it's a very big positive from Williams. We get a lot of questions about Logan Sargent and other podcasts that I've talked about, other episodes here and others, and the other podcast that I was on about almost 2 months ago now. We get questions about some of the other guys on the grid, and Sargent was one of them. Sargent's P5 here, so I'm very interested to see how he goes in FP3 tomorrow, and of course qualifying and then the race on Sunday. So what do I expect from qualifying tomorrow? You have to expect Max to get pole again. But what's weird is there's one guy missing from this timing table that I didn't expect to be missing from FP2 today, and that was Leclerc, who is the only driver to not get a lap in today. There's no information why, not from my knowledge, but you saw the hometown guys, very concerning as well. That was the other thing I was going to mention. In FP2, we had Lando go P14 and Hamilton P15 at a track that Lewis Hamilton, that's probably, I think, his best track is Silverstone. I mean, he had that very infamous rain weather. I mean, the race in the rain where he lapped most of the field, lapped the 17 cars and won in 2009. So he's had some very big moments. This could be a big moment, but for the other reasons, the concerns with Mercedes in these types of tracks with heavy tire wear. So what do I expect from the race? You have to expect Max wins again. He gets pole. He does all of this. Second to seventh, though, I think can go in a million directions. So I do think Perez, this is a track where you could really bounce back at. It's a track that Perez had that famous moment from last year. The through goes Hamilton. Perez is battling Leclerc. I think Perez and Leclerc are going to be the rest of your top three. The question is, what other names are going to be in the top 10? And I'm very intrigued to see what that rest of the top 10 looks like. We're going to head over to our last topic of the day. I know, quick episode, but that's just the way today's episodes are going. That this episode during the next couple are probably going to be going to be shortened. There's not a lot to talk about, but we're going to head over to Wimbledon next. And there's actually, you're going to love this fact. It took them 4 days to get to the first round. I was on the flight 2 days ago, and they were like closing the roof and not closing the roof. It was a very weird situation. But looking at the brackets, my pick Casper Ruud's out of this thing already, which makes me not the best result, but let's look at the rest of the field. So yesterday we had Tsitsipas go through, beating Great Britain's Andy Murray. You had Medvedev look good against Mannarino. But the match I was looking at, I was able to watch a lot of, was Medvedev and Ferry from on court one from Wednesday. And I'm gonna be honest, Medvedev was powering, but if you could play a good drop shot, that's how you're gonna be Medvedev in this. He hasn't been the greatest on grass, and the McEnroe brothers who were calling the game were talking about that. Medvedev has not. I mean, Medvedev has won in straight sets twice now, and he will, I believe, plays tomorrow. Medvedev plays tomorrow against Fuchsevich. I think that's how you say it, which should be a very interesting matchup. But my game match to watch tomorrow, just for reference, I'm going to go with Dadovic Fokina, who has had good runs in majors. He's made it to the quarterfinals of a couple majors, I believe. And he's playing Holger Rune from Denmark. So I think that's the only head-to-head ranked match other than Tiafoe and Dimitrov. I think that's also going to be a very fun match. But Dadovic Fokina and Rune at 7:15 a.m. on court 3, and then Tiafoe and Dimitrov on court number 2. I think those are your two matches to watch for on the men's side tomorrow. But going back to what's happened today, you had Rublev go through, Shapovalov beat Liam Brody, who beat Rune, just for reference. Rude, excuse me. You had Cam Norrie get eliminated to Eubanks, which is a big upset. You had Jannik Sinner go through after dropping the opening set to Haley's. I believe that's how you say his name. You got Alcaraz. People say it different ways, but Alcaraz is through as well. You de Minaur in the second round with a big upset, with de Minaur going down to Berrettini. Of course, Holger Rune beating Carballes Baena. Herkeratz beat Musetti, which in straight sets, which really questions how good is Herkeratz? Is he that really big name that people are going to be sleeping on the rest of the way? And I talked about Herkeratz. He was one of my sleeper picks to do really well. Like, granted, he's the 17th seed, but Herbert Herkeratz has looked good. He's won a straight sets match against the 14th seed Musetti. So I'm very interested to see how the rest of his draw is going to go. I believe he plays the winner of Novak and Wawrinka, which is actually currently live, but you have to imagine Novak up 2-0 is going to get through Wawrinka. So you could possibly see, I think, one of the 3 players in this field that's remaining that could beat Novak or Alcaraz. I thought it was Herkeratz, and other people think, you have to say Jannik Sinner. And out of the guys tomorrow, I think Holger Rune has to be on the list. So it's really 3 or 4 guys, other than Alcaraz beating Novak or vice versa. I think those 3 are the only ones that could take down those other big 2 players, and you have to watch out for all of them. Also, I think Tiafoe could be one to watch. Who knows, though? I think Dimitrov's a very tough ass. I think that match is going to go to 5 sets, but it's been very fun to watch this tournament so far, and a lot of upsets, but some of the big name guys have made it through so far. And Stefanos Tsitsipas also, I think people are going to be really hyping up. But remember last time you got to this round at like this stage of the tournament, he struggled against a guy like Nick Kyrgios. So I'm very interested to see if he gets to the round of 16, who he would face and how he would handle the situation itself. That's very intriguing to me. But on the women's side, which is our last part of the day, you had Swiatek, there you go, beat Martic in straight sets, really pushing the name that Iga Swiatek is the big favorite as she beats a seeded player in straight sets. You had Sofia Kenin, who upset Coco Gauff in the first round, fall to Svitolina, there you go, in straight sets. You had Jessica Pegula winning straight sets today. Madison Keys, who was made a U.S. Open final, losing to Sloane Stephens. She made it through in their second round. And you had a couple other names. Kalinina lost to Bianca Andreescu. That's an interesting result. And you had 2 ranked players. Bencic beat Lynette in their match. And Ons Jabeur, who was my pick to win this thing, she has to beat Bai from China. And you currently have a matchup where Buskova is playing Caroline Garcia. We do not know the result of that, but that match is about to end. If Caroline Garcia goes out, I believe that's her name. If she goes out, that really opens the door for Ons Jabeur and, of course, Pegula to really make some noise in this tournament for sure. So looking at the matchups tomorrow, because tomorrow is their third round, you'll see all of the players that you saw today, other than Garcia, make play tomorrow. The match tomorrow to watch out for. I mean, you have to think of Ons Jabeur against Andreescu, Rybakina, and Boltier. That should be an interesting one for the home court advantage for Boltier. Sabalenka's playing Blinkova, so the battle of the same nationality players. You had Madison Keys. You had Haddad Maya, who dropped her opening set in her opening match. That'll be an interesting one. But Kostic and Kvitova, I think, could be interesting as well. For Sunday, you had a round of 16 matches. I think all of their round of 16s can be on Sunday. You had Swiatek and Bencic. I think it's going to be an interesting one for sure. Two Ukrainian players, just to note, and Svitolina and Surenko I'll stay alive as well. But it's a very interesting draw, and what you could really expect is the experienced players. I think Ons Jabeur is probably going to have her most intense match of the tournament upcoming against Bianca Andreescu. I mean, Andreescu's been in majors before. She's a more experienced player. Rybakina, you have to imagine the woman from Kazakhstan. Shout out to Kazakhstan, of course, for no reason at all. You have to imagine she gets through in this as well. I think the upset, though, could be with Andreeva getting Potapova in the 9:15 match on court 3 for their third round match. But other things to watch for tomorrow, you had Tsitsipas is actually playing in doubles. I believe that's his brother. I haven't really paid attention to this at all. Be the 3 seed in men's doubles, losing their first round with Ram and Salisbury, losing to Stevens and Griekspoor. You had the Americans of Ben Shelton and Mackenzie McDonald lose to Nice and Zielinski. You had I don't really think there's many upsets in this so far. You did have a match cancel with Tommy Paul and Tiafoe. I don't know the status of that at all. We'll try to look for it, but I believe they're not going to play that match. But looking at the doubles teams, Casper Ruud is playing doubles. Could this be the moment where Casper Ruud makes his noise on the doubles circuit this time? That's an interesting idea. You had JJ Wolf, another team of Americans. So there's a very interesting field, that's for sure. On the women's doubles side, you have really the one team I was looking for. Let me see how they did. A lot of canceled matches. Yeah, Mertens and Sanders, who I thought I believe they've been a team before. I know Mertens is good in doubles, but they're through. You had the mixed doubles team of Demonor and Boltier make it through. So a lot of stuff going on at Wimbledon, and there's a lot of fun stuff to watch out for on the sports side. But this is what it's going to be like for the next couple of episodes until like the big more news comes out. It's going to be these shorter episodes, and that's just the way it's going to be. But what to watch for this weekend is going to be Wimbledon for sure. It's a transfer window. Just to name what's been going on, of course, you had the 2 signings with Arsenal. Christian Pulisic, I just want to mention this. Christian Pulisic did move officially from Chelsea to AC Milan. I talked about it on Instagram briefly that I think this is a very positive move for the American for sure. There's been a lot of other stuff going on for sure. Baseball, we'll talk about that on Monday. Monday or Friday, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Unfortunately, this is all the time that I'm going to have for this episode. There'll be more to talk about for sure on Monday. Until then, I'm Robbie Basel. We'll see you guys next time.